So this is part 2 to the fortification using alligation calculation. Just to quickly recap, we had set up our alligation table, the diagram, the illustration, and we solved to know that 15 parts would be the zinc oxide, 80 parts will be the fixed 5% zinc oxide ointment. Now, we had proven that the total parts for the fortification would have been 95 parts right here. Now, remember, the total for fortification is never known. So we had done option 1 for this calculation using alligation. And so we're going to move with this recording with option 2, where the focus is the total parts. The recording that was just done prior to this, we focused on the 15 parts, which told us that the answer is 600 grams. So 3,200 grams is to 80 parts. So therefore, how much grams is to 15 parts? We focused on the API. And I want to show you that you didn't have to do that either. You can set up your alligation table, and instead of focusing on the 15 parts, what you can do is solve to see what the total fortified product should be. Real simple. If 3,200 is to 80 parts, then the 90 parts, which is the total ointment, total parts, is 3,800 grams. So all you have to do is the total ointment minus the total stock to be used to know the deficit for the zinc oxide, which is 600 grams. And so you could have looked at the formulation from this perspective, but there's another way that you can actually look at this. Fortification using ratio and proportion. Let's go. Now, we know the same question, okay? We know that zinc oxide ointment is 3,200 grams, and that's very fixed. To do ratio and proportion, you have to understand what percentage mean and what a stock is. A stock is something on your shelf that you're going to be weighing out 3,200 grams from, and in this 3,200 grams is some drug being buried and carried by this aliquot. And so how do we know what is being carried? The concentration. It's a 5% ointment. So 5 over 100 times 3,200 grams is 160 grams. So 160 grams of zinc oxide is being carried by the stock aliquot that we're starting with. It simply means that 3,200 grams minus the active, which is being carried, will leave us with 3,040 grams of base, ointment base. Let's look at what the stock material is. So this is a stock. We're breaking down the stock, and that you have to do if you're going to solve this question using ratio and proportion. The ointment base is 3,040 grams. The zinc oxide being carried is 160, and so we know the total mixture to be fortified is 3,200. What do we do next? This new request is asking us for a 20% zinc oxide product, not a 5. So the ointment base is going to be 80% in the newly fortified product. Ointment base is the non-drug component. So if I want a 20% product, the drug component is 20%. So the non-drug, which is the base, must be 80. It's logical. Think about it now. So the 3,040 grams being carried in this stock will now be the 80%. Let's look at it. The original stock, the zinc oxide, was 5% and the ointment base was 95%. That's the stock we had. But we're going to modify this to become right here. So what do? Let's look at what we do. 3,040 grams, which is the ointment base in the original stock being used, represents 80%. So how much will represent 100% of the newly fortified product? That's how we get 3,800 grams. Does this number look familiar? If we should go back to the previous recording, that's the total weight for the fortified product, 100%. Total product represents 100%. So what do we do now? what we do is we solve for the zinc oxide powder by saying the total mixture minus 3,200, and we still get the 600 grams. So this brings us to the end of the video. Go back and watch the recording. Fortification of semi-solid can be solved using ratio and proportion and understanding what percentage means, or all fails. This is the longer method. Let's backtrack. Simply set up your alligation. Alligation does it in half the time that ratio and proportion would. And so whichever method you are more comfortable with, you work with that one. With that said, that's the end of the video showing you a second option for the alligation table with focus on the total parts, which is 3,800 grams, right? Or I showed you how to use ratio and proportion, where you look at the percentage being carried and the base that is present. So for the ratio and proportion, the base being carried in the stock ointment becomes the focus of the attention, right? Thank you. Remember to like this video if it has been beneficial.